In this video, I'm going to show you how to fine-tune ChatGPT. So if you're using ChatGPT for any form of writing or content creation and you're struggling to get it to sound right, to sound like your particular style that you're looking for, then this video is exactly what you need to do. Fine-tuning is a concept where we can actually train ChatGPT models or OpenAI's models to get it to sound exactly like we want it. So it kind of mimics a style that we train it. So we take an existing ChatGPT model like 4.1 or any model we want, and we can just train it through a series of steps, which I'm going to show you how to do in this video with a real example. And then ChatGPT then learns the style, and this way you can control how it comes out. So it's a really helpful technique if you're doing any form of automation for content creation. So in this video, I'm going to take you through exactly what it is and why do it, which we kind of touched on already. And then I'm going to show you how to do it by building an automation in N8N. So N8N is the workflow that we're going to use to build it. And there's a couple other tools that we're going to use, which is Google Sheets and Airtable. Now, you can do this with a free account with Airtable. You don't need to have a paid account to do it. And if you need to use N8N, I've got a link below this video. So before we jump in and actually build the automation, I just want to give you a bird's eye overview of what we're going to do in this concept so you can understand. So what we're going to be doing is getting content that we already like. So if you've got your existing content and that's the style that you want to train ChatGPT on, what we do is we get this content into a format that we can then send over to OpenAI using an API call. And then we give it to them in a format called a JSON-L file, which OpenAI receives, and then it begins to train whatever model that you've told it to on this content that you're giving it. So we give it a whole lot of inputs, and this is what we control, and I'll show you how to do it. So you need to get content that you actually want ChatGPT to learn from. And then we feed it into OpenAI's fine-tuning models. And it's not exactly that difficult to do this. You don't have to be really skilled or technically advanced to be able to do this. Anyone can do this, and I'll show you how. And then once OpenAI is finished doing that, it's going to send us a response, and it's going to give us a new model. So then when you're building automations and choosing 4.1 or whatever model you're choosing from ChatGPT, you can now instead select your own model to use when you're running your automation. So it actually gives you a new model that's tuned specifically for your needs. So that's what we're doing in this video. Now let's get in and build this in N8N together. Okay, this is what it looks like over at N8N. So if you haven't got an account at N8N, you need to get one. There's a link below the video. I'm going to walk you through step by step and build this with you, but I just want to show you an overview of what it actually is. It might be intimidating for people who haven't done this before, but it's really not that difficult to do this. And if you could do me a huge favor and hit the like and subscribe and leave me a comment below of any other types of videos that you want me to create, because people in the last video left a comment that they wanted me to do the fine-tuning video, so now I'm doing it. So any videos you want, just let me know in the comments below, and I'll have a look at them, and hopefully we can put them together for you. So what we're doing here is we have a webhook. So the webhook is going to be coming in from Airtable, and I'll show you Airtable in a moment. But the information that that we want to actually trigger comes from Airtable. So we bring it in from Airtable, and there's a module here that just gets those records over at Airtable. So we pre-populate Airtable with certain metrics that we want. We will get to that, so just hold on for a second, you'll understand more. Then once we do that, we have a Google Sheet that's got that content. So you remember before I said we got to feed that content to ChatGPT. Well, we're going to put all of this content on a Google Sheet, and you're just going to get lots of examples, and you're going to populate a Google Sheet. Not really difficult to do. Once the Google Sheet's populated with the examples you want to train, we're going to pull them in, and then these code nodes here are just going to restructure everything that we get from the Google Sheet in a way that we can send it to OpenAI. That's really all that's happening here. It's pretty straightforward. OpenAI is then going to send us a response here, and it's going to be telling us, we're working on your file. Now, this can take some time. It can take sometimes 20 minutes to do it. And then we're going to get that response and save it back at Airtable. And then what we're going to do is just be waiting for OpenAI to tell us if the job's finished or not. So we can set a module here where we keep periodically checking, is the job done? Eventually, OpenAI is going to give us a response, and that could be a success, hopefully, if it works, or it might be that the job got canceled because there was some sort of error, or that it failed. or it's just taking too long. So we can handle those responses that we get back in different ways, which is all we're doing over here. And depending on what the response was, we're going to update Airtable with, hopefully, at the end, a successful new model that we can then use. And once we've got that model, we can take it and use it in our automations. And it will show up when you're using like AI agents or something. When you log in and do the drop-down menu for the different models that you choose, your new model will actually be there, straight there for you to choose. So that's a cool thing about fine-tuning. So then hopefully you can, if you get this right with enough examples, your writing automations or whatever you're using it for will start to sound more like what you want them to sound like. So let's walk through how we're going to put this together. So the first step that you need to do here is a webhook. So you go on the right-hand side on N8N and you just put webhook like that. Once you open the webhook, you just need to copy the URL here, which is the webhook URL that you're going to need. So you need to save that for a second. Okay, then we're going to need to look at doing this Airtable setup here. So I'm going to hop over to Airtable now. And again, you don't need to use a paid account. I've set it up in a way that will work with a free account. But of course, if you're using a paid account, you can do more complex things. But for this video, I've kept it reasonably simple. So let's head over to Airtable and have a look at what this looks like at Airtable. Then we're going to come back and finish creating the rest of this. So over to Airtable, you just need to set up a table and a base. So you just create a new table and base on Airtable. It's pretty straightforward to do that. Once you've got it set up, I just called it fine-tuning and then the fine-tuning models. You just need two tables in here. So one of them is the first one here. I'll show you how to set this up now. So the first thing you do is just have an ID. So if you're doing a lot of these, you can have, you want to keep a track of it. So you just have an ID column here. So if I set this up, ID, it's just an auto number field that will auto-populate for you. The next one is the name. So in here, it's the name of the model. So I was playing around with an example of a health blog that I read sometimes here, and I was just testing what it would be like to sound like that writer. I'm obviously not going to use that, but that was an example I hit here. So you just name this anything that you want that the model is. So it's a single line of text, and then that's just all you have to do is name it. So here we have a status field here, which it depends on all the different statuses that you want to set up. But these are what you call a single select. So you go single select, and then the amount of selections that you want in here. So you can have OpenAI will give you different responses when we actually run the model that we looked at before. So this is where you can put in ready for processing, in progress, succeeded, failed, timed out, or canceled. So you can pause the video and create those, but you just need to have a drop-down status menu like this for all the different statuses that you're going to be using. Okay, the next one is just a text field, which is just a fine-tuned model name. So this is when you're finished and completed, and you want to have that model to use in your automations. Well, this is what it would be called in here. So if you just edit this is just a single line of text, and we call it fine-tuned model names. Here is the base model. So in the base model, what we're doing here is we can choose different OpenAI models to fine-tune. So these are the models that they have. So if we have a look over at OpenAI, you can see how OpenAI tell us what options we have for models to fine-tune. So I'm over at OpenAI. If you just go to platform.openai.com, docs, guides, fine-tuning best practices, that's the URL I'm at now. They actually walk you through how to do it here. So it's really, if you ever get lost, just come over to OpenAI, you need an account there, and then they'll walk you through exactly how to do it right here. But to save you having to go through all that now, I'll just shortcut it for you and show you how to do all of this stuff here. But really down below, they show you the model here, the models that you can use. So they allow 4.1. I think there's other models here as well. I can't exactly remember where they have a list of the models, but if you play around in here, it'll show you the list of models available. But really, for the purposes of this, we're just going to be using 4.1. You can use 4.1 Nini or Nano or 4.0. I think they had 4.3, but these are probably all you're really going to be needing. So these are the models that we can choose that we want to fine tune. So I'm going to use the latest model here, which is 4.1's model here. So this is what we're going to be focusing on. So in order to do this, you do need an account at OpenAI. So if you haven't got an account, go and get an account, get set up, because you need your API key in order to connect to OpenAI to send this information over. So get an account, get set up, and then go and follow their instructions on how to get an API key. It's really not difficult to do. It's really a couple of clicks once you're logged in and got an account. You just go to your settings and then go create API key. But you're going to need that in order for this to work. So have a read through that. But in the meantime, let's get back and set the rest of this up. So once I've got the model, I just select that model. Now I could just put that as a text field if I just want to have one model. If you want to have lots of different models, then you'd have to change that here to be a single select and put all the models in that you want to fine tune. But probably for most of you, it's just going to be just put a single model as a text field. It's a little bit easier just to do that if you want to. The next thing we're going to do is put the file here of the actual Google file that we're fine tuning. I'm going to get to the Google file in a minute and show you how to do that part. But for now, in here, all we need to do is to set up a URL field and just call it the data where it's coming from. So if we move along, there's a couple other settings over here that we need to set up. They're really not only going to be used occasionally. It's not difficult, but we need a method. So here, there's a select a method, and it's just supervised. I've only got one method in there now, so you actually don't need to have a single select. You could have just done a single text field and just put the word supervised. Then we need to have a couple of other things here. This is really more advanced fine-tuning things, so you're probably never really going to use these. But anyway, we don't need the label field here. Seed and batch size and rate limiter. If you read through the OpenAI documents, you can control things at a slightly more granular level if you want to, and control the amount of batches. Most of the time, if you're just getting into this, you're probably going to just always have these set at 0. It's at the epochs. That will be something that we're going to have set to a number. But for all these fields, they're just all number fields over here, except the last couple. So just set these to seed, optional, batch size, optional, learning rate multiplier like this. I'll just show you that one because I'm going a bit quick. Learning rate multiplier, and then you can put optional. These are all just number fields at the moment that are all set to 0. Number of epochs, again, you can have optional. You don't have to have these things. That's why it says optional, but you can have that set to 0 too. So just set these all like this for now and just set them up as number fields exactly like I've got it. So pause the video, create all those fields, and then let's move on, and we're almost done at Airtable. So the next thing here is OpenAI's fine-tuning ID. So here's a single line of text. All this is once OpenAI has actually created a fine-tuning job for us, they send you a response with the ID of the job. We want to make a record of that because when we're polling to see if the job's done, we need to know what that ID is for us to check. So that's all this is here. And then finally, we've got an error code message here that we're just going to have as a long text field like that, error. So the next thing that we need to do, if you're using a free account at OpenAI, we need to trigger this automation in a way that sends this whole row of information through to N8N for us. So the simplest way to do it, if you don't want to have a paid account, is just do one row at a time. So just have one row that you're working on in here, and then it will pull that row through. Or you can have multiple rows, but you just have to filter for it. So obviously this is a lot easier to do if you've got a paid account, and you can have an automation running in the background that's going to allow you to do multiple batches and filter things. But to keep it simple, I'm just going to do it as if you had a free version. For those of you who are more advanced and have watched a lot of my videos on Airtable, you'll understand more about what I mean, that you don't have to do it this way, and you can just do it in a more advanced way. But let's just do the simple way. You have another table set up here, which is just called sync here. And all we're going to do in this field here is set up this option here, which is a button option. So we click the button drop-down menu, and then all we're doing in here is a open URL field action here. And this is where we just put our webhook. So you remember in N8N, we created that webhook and copied it. You just paste that in there like that. So it's an open URL function here. So if we go open URL is the function, and it's a button that we're choosing here. So all that's happening is when we click that button here, it's going to fire that webhook rather, for us, and then enable us to send over this information in this row to N8N. So if we go back to N8N now that that's set up, once I come back here and actually click that button, it's going to fire this automation in here. So I can actually just show you how to do it. If I just unpin this data that I was playing around with, if I just unpin that for a second, what I can do is click execute workflow. So now if this is all you've got on the workflow here, and nothing else at this point, and if you set up the fine tuning to what I've just gone through in Airtable, we can then go to sync like that. And if we head back to N8N, you see that webhook fired. It was pretty quick. We had to be quick to get there, but you can see now it's gone green because that's all you need to do to fire the webhook. So once the webhook is fired, now we can connect it to the next module here, which is an Airtable module. So what we need to do is pull that record in from Airtable. So in order to do this, you do need to have a connection from Airtable and N8N. So you need to go through the credentials to connect. But let me show you first what to do here. It's a search records module. So if we go over to Airtable on N8N here and we go search records, we're going to pull in a module which is a search records module. Now here's the step if you haven't done this before and made a connection. You have to go up to the top here and go new connection. So if you go down the bottom, you're going to have to go new connection here. You need to get your API token, and it's an OAuth connection here. So if you haven't done this step before, pause the video, read the documents in here, and then just go through how to connect N8N and Airtable. It'll take a little bit of time, maybe like you haven't done it before on your first time through, it's probably going to take you like 5 minutes to go and work it out, maybe 10 minutes if you've never done it. But it's not super difficult to do. It's just going to take a little bit of extra time and make this video too long if I walk through how to do that connection. But just go through the OAuth connection here, follow the documents if you get confused at all, and then once you've got the two OAuth things connected, then you're good to go, and then you can send information from N8N to Airtable using these modules that are built into N8N. So if I go back out of here, once that connection and that bridge is set up, then from the records here, I can choose that fine-tuning base. So the operation is a search here. And then I choose the actual table, which is the fine-tuning one. So if you remember here, we set it up and it was called fine-tuning. Once you've done that connection, it can find all of your tables and bases for you automatically. So, sorry, I'm in the wrong one. So if we do that, the table that we're choosing is the fine-tuning table. Fine-tuning models rather here. So in order to filter for that record that we just sent, because we're using the free method, I've just done a really basic filter, which is filter by the ID row equals 53. So you'll notice here, if we go back here, the ID row, was ID 53. See, it says 53. So I know that's the row it's pulling through. And again, this is a bit of a hack so you can use the free account. If you weren't doing it this way, and you had a webhook fire on an automation, it would just pull all those records through and you wouldn't have to do this filter step. But you have to have a paid automation to use Airtable's automation. So let's just continue doing it in this way. But you just basically have to tell it which row that you're pulling. It's row 53 that you're working on that you're pulling through. So you're just going to filter for squiggly brackets ID equals 53. And then if you click execute, it's going to pull that row through. So here, now we've pulled that row through here to Airtable. It's pretty straightforward to do the rest here. We just need to go and set up the actual content in Google Drive to actually pull that through and send it to OpenAI. After this point here, it's actually really not that difficult to do. There's not heaps more steps to do. OpenAI sort of does a lot of the heavy lifting for us, and then we just sit and wait for it to do its thing. So let's look at this module here of Google Drive. So the first thing you need to do is set up the Google Drive folder. In order to do that with N8N, it's kind of similar to Airtable. You need to build an API connection to do it. So what we need to do here is go over here and go Google Docs like this. So Google Sheets that we're setting up here, and it's get a row. So if we go to Google Sheets here, we're going to be getting a row here. This get a row Google Sheets. So if I open this up here, you need again to get a connection. So if you haven't done it, you need to do this whole connection with Google Drive as well. So again, I'm not going to stop the video and go through how to connect Google Drive to N8N. It does take a couple of steps. I encourage you just to watch a video on YouTube. There's lots of videos on how to do it. It is a little bit tricky if you haven't done anything with Google Drive before, but once you've got it set up once, the good thing is it's easy from that point onwards just to connect Google Drive to N8N. But you need to do this connection with your client ID and your client secret. Google is a little bit finicky, so go and watch a video, come back, and once you're set up with that, then you're good to go here, and you've got that bridge between N8N and Google Drive. So I'm going to just assume you've done that step there, and you've got that connection. Then it's the same thing as Airtable. You can now pull in different rows and Google file IDs. So in order to actually pull the Google file, we first need to get it into Airtable so that we can pull that record. So you'll remember back at Airtable, we had a row, which is this Google Drive file. So we actually have to put the Google Drive file in here in order for it to pull through on that automation. So in order to put it here, we need to create it. So now let's create this Google file. Then we'll come back in here and paste it in here. And then we can pull it through and carry on the automation in N8N. So if I go and show you an example here of a fine-tuning model. So here's a couple of fine-tuning examples that I've been working on for people recently. All you actually have to do, it might look kind of intimidating when you see a lot of this file here with so much information, but it's actually just quite a lot of repetition. So at the top, I'm just going to show you what it looks like here. First thing you need to do is just create a new Google Sheet, just a standard Google Sheet. Then you need to give it 3 headers at the top here, which is messages.system, messages.user, and messages.assistant. Okay, so there's just 3 columns. And each of these rows are just different content examples that we're sending over. So the more examples you send over, the more likely ChatGPT will get trained to be like what you want it to sound like. They say to give it about 50 examples. I've done on this one, I think it was 20 or 18 in this particular, no, I did more, sorry, I did 25. Okay, so this takes a little bit of time to prepare that content because you've got to choose the content that you want to train it on. So obviously that's only something that you're going to know. But what you want to do in here, the system message is explaining to it what type of content that this is. So when you're doing any sort of prompting using OpenAI's tools, you have a system message where you explain what you want it to do. Then you have a user message, which has actually got the example content that you want it to mimic or copy. And then you give it an output. So you're showing it examples of what you want it to do. So you're saying, in this example here, I know it's kind of hard to read that, but I'll just read it out. It says, write blog articles and educational content that explain complex wellness and fitness topics. So I'm just explaining to it what the actual use case of this is. So it depends on what you're using the content for. If you're doing content and you want it to sound like a social media post in a particular style, like a LinkedIn post, then this system message is going to be all tailored around telling it, write content for a LinkedIn post that will be used in this niche, and you just explain what you're doing in this section, in the system message. It depends on the content style here, but you're training it on what you want it to do, the type of content. Then in the user message here, we've just got write a blog article selection teaching readers about the history and evolution of this particular example. Is for a different client. But here we're just giving it more instructions on the type of content. So this system message here, I'll give you an example below the video so you can look at it and understand it. But it's basically just training it on the system and the user message. And then each different piece of content might be different. So this one's develop a blog post segment that helps readers understand the difference between this and this. So the content is tailored to the user message and the system message. So each piece of content obviously is going to be slightly different because you're going to get different examples. And over here is where you give it the actual output that it produced here. So here you're giving it the output of what you want it to sound like. So this is the goal of what you want the OpenAI model to actually sound like. So this is really important here. If you give it garbage here, you're going to get garbage out, and you're going to train it to sound like garbage. So this is where you have to be really careful. You have to take your time and actually give it the right examples that sound the way you want it to sound. So if you're doing a blog article here, if the user prompt's about a blog article, and the system prompt and the user prompt are all focused around a blog article, obviously the example in the assistant is going to be a section of a blog article. It doesn't have to be the entire blog article, but it's got to give it a reasonable amount of content to understand. So in here, you actually don't, in here you train it on what it's doing, like the type of blog article that it is. If it's like a different type of a guide or a listicle or whatever it exactly is, you give it that in the system prompt. And here we're just saying, write a blog article section. So not the entire blog article. It's just writing one section of it. So that's what these are doing. It's just giving it the instructions. But here is the actual blog article section completed that we would want it to sound like. So that's just an important nuance that you need to understand. What kind of content we're doing, what exactly is it, a whole section, is it just a list, what is it, and then the actual finished piece of content here. So there's 3 steps to fine-tuning that you have to understand. So you're just giving it these examples. So once you've populated your sheet with a system, a user, and the assistant, you can do 50 of these. Don't make them too long because you don't want to overdo it. Like this is the longest amount that I've ever done is just this size of a chunk like this. And then once this file is completed, it's this Google document file here that we want to go and save back into Airtable. So if we go back to Airtable, that's all I've put in here. It's just the Google Drive file, just the URL of that file. You have to make sure the permissions are set to share, open to anyone, don't have private permissions or it won't have access. So make that available and then just grab that URL and the shared URL and put it into this sheet here. That's all you're doing. Once you've got it in that sheet, we can pull it through to the automation. So if we go back to the automation, once we do that, that URL will have pulled through. And you can see here when we pulled through that row that the Google Drive file is here in data. So if I drop that in to this field of the URL of the document, that's where that would show up. So you can see it's set by URL. So that's telling Google Drive, this is the URL that I want to pull through. It's like, oh yeah, we got it. And then it's going to pull through and give you it. So you can see over here, if I set this over here, to JSON like this, you can see these are all those rows from that fine-tuning file that are now pulled into N8N for us to be able to use. So once we've got it here, at this stage, we've got everything that we need to continue doing this fine-tuning. So we've got our examples. Now we just have to go through sending those over to OpenAI. So I'm going to give you these below the video for you to be able to use here. So you got a couple of code nodes here that are just changing this format into a JSON-L file so that it can be sent to OpenAI because OpenAI needs it. So these code nodes are just preparing this document, this Google Drive information and data in a way that OpenAI can use it. So you don't really need to know about how it's doing it. It's just doing it in a way that works. Over here, we need to have an OpenAI model, which is allowing us to send that file over to do the fine tuning. So if I open up this here, again, you need an account at OpenAI, go through and create your credentials and add in your API key. And here, because you need to get this set up. So it's the same thing with anything with automation. You need to have your API keys. So what we're doing in here in this OpenAI model is we connect our account, the resources file, and the operation is upload a file, and we just set the file data name to data, purpose, fine tune. That's all we need to do here like that, is just to do that step. And it's going to get the data, because that second code node here is creating this JSON-L file into a binary file that we can send. So we get turned into JSON-L, formatted into binary. That's what these two steps are doing. Once it's in binary, it will then, if we set that field to data, send that file over to OpenAI to start doing the fine-tuning. Once that executes in this step, OpenAI is going to send us back a file ID, which you can see on the right-hand side, because I've got this pinned data from when I was doing it earlier. Now that we've got that file ID, we can then check the status of when the fine-tuning job is done. So let me just first show you what actually happens when we do a fine-tuning job. So I'm going to unpin this example here, and I'm going to unpin this one, and I'm going to show you what actually happens. So at this stage, if we run this automation, I'm just going to actually unpin all of this so you can see what happens. I'm going to take it up to here for now by just clicking play. I'm going to pin that webhook so I don't have to fire it again. I'm just going to click that play the automation here. You can see it's going to Airtable, it's going to the Google Drive, it's formatting it in the two formats we need, and we're up to this step now here. So at this point here, you can see here, if I execute this step as well, I'm going to pin the rest of this data beforehand. And you can see if I now execute that OpenAI file, it's going, it didn't do it properly. If I execute that now, it's going to ping OpenAI with that file. Oh, we got an error. So let's have a look at what's going on here. Oh, it's saying that I can't do it with pin data. So if I look back here, I can't actually pin this data because it's going to get confused. So let's just run it from here up to here again, and then that should work. It's going to pull that data through and then ping OpenAI. See, now it worked. So if I look here, we get a file ID back here. That's what we wanted. So now that that's there like that, I'm going to pin the rest of that data so we don't have to keep sending that through. So once we're up to this step now, we need to now over here actually run the fine-tuning job. So the way we do this is just using an HTTP request module. So if you go to the right-hand side, you can go HTTP request like that, and then you can set up this HTTP module here and leave all the settings exactly as I've got it here. Again, this workflow will be below the video for you, but everything stays the same here. All you have to do is send body over here and then send this JSON body like this. So here might look a little bit intimidating, but it's really not that difficult. We're just mapping a whole bunch of fields in a format that OpenAI tells us how to do it. So before we do this, let's just hop over to OpenAI and have a look at where we get this from and what this actually looks like. So over at that document where I showed you earlier, where they show you how to do fine tuning, you'll see here they actually give you this setup right here that you can copy. So this is essentially what we're setting up here. Just they tell us what they want you to send over and how to do it in this JSON format here. So that's all we're doing in this step. So over here we paste that in, and then we just have to map in all of the information in order for this to work. So the training file is that file that we just got back from OpenAI. So you'll notice they gave us this file ID. So that drops and drags straight into the training file in there. That's all that is. It gives you that file ID that they just sent us back. As for model and suffix and method, these are all things that we saved back at Airtable. So you'll notice back at Airtable, we set up the model that we wanted to use. So if we go back to the search records module at Airtable, all of this information is stored in Airtable, because you'll remember when we went to Airtable, that's why we set up all these fields at the beginning. We set up the base model, we set up the data from the Google file, which we've already used, the fine-tuning model name. Oh, that's going to be updated at the end. The name that we wanted to call it here. All these fields were set up for a reason here. All of these, which we're not really going to use except the number of epochs. And that's what's being pulled through and mapped here if we go back to N8N. So if I go back here, this is all what this stuff is. So if we go and just find all these fields, we can just map them in. So the base model here is actually going in that model field here. And then the suffix is just what we wanted to actually call the model, which is just the name. So the name field here is going in here as a name. And we're just adding a little bit of code on the end to clean that up so it doesn't have any weird spaces or characters at the end. So it's just taking the name field, all that suffix is. You don't have to add all this other stuff on if you don't want to, but that's what it's doing. And then in the method, we just use the method as supervised. So you can have different methods here. But I've only just used the supervised method. So that's just dropping in supervised like that. And then the number of epochs is just how many batches of training data we're sending over. So on that Google sheet, we had that set to 25 on my example here. So I've just, for simplicity, left all of these just at 0 for now. We're mapping these in from Airtable. But you remember they were all set to just 0 or auto. So you can see here we've got an option here. If we don't actually set a number, it's just going to have a double pipe, which is the AND option here, and it's going to set it to automatically choose. So OpenAI will get it and work out what to do. So you can just leave these really all as they are, and it's going to work for you. But you do need to make sure you drag in these other ones. So once you've got this file set up like this, then you're good to go. You can now send that information over to OpenAI. So OpenAI has already got the Google file because that's why they sent us this file back. That pinging that training file back is saying, we've received the Google file that you sent us in the JSON-L format, and we're just letting you know, and here's an ID if you want an update and check on this. The rest of these settings are really just telling it, what do you want us to do with this information that you sent across? And that's what we're choosing, a model and the name of it, how to do it. That's what this step is all about. So once you've got that step set up like this, then we can actually run it. And what will happen as we go to our OpenAI account, which I'm going to hop over to there now, it'll actually show up in here and it'll start running it. So I'm going to run it and then turn it off as an example. So let me come over here. I'll actually run this step. I'll click play so you can see what's going to happen. It's going to play in a second here. And there it goes. So if I go over to OpenAI now, and if I refresh this here, you're going to see a new model is starting to be trained. See, it says validating the file. So here, if I open it, it's actually starting to do the fine tuning. So this takes some time now, and this is why we need to move on to the next step and just keep polling and checking. Did it work? Was there a problem? OpenAI is going to send us a response. If there was a problem, they're going to tell us. If it was completed successfully, they're going to tell us. And that's just going to keep validating until, it might take 20 minutes. Because I've already done this one, I'm going to cancel that job now. I don't want to do that job because I've done it already. If I come back here to N8N, what we want to do now, once that's sitting and ticking away, is we're going to update a record here with some information back at Airtable that we need. So we're going to do an update record Airtable module. So you're going to do the same exact models that we did before here. We're going to do fine tuning, same table and model, and we're just going to update a record ID with that fine tuning ID that they sent us. So all we're going to do here is go columns to match on as ID. We're going to drag the ID in, which is just the record ID of this Airtable table. So the way we do that is that when we pulled that Airtable module through in the first place, we got that record ID of the row we're working on. So we grab that and we match on that. All we're doing is saying to Airtable, update this record here, because I want to go and save my fine-tuning ID for this particular run that I'm doing back at Airtable, just so I've got a record. It's really quite straightforward. You're just updating that fine-tuning record ID back at Airtable. So run that step here with a update record like this. It's going to send that back to Airtable. So if you go back to Airtable, that fine-tuning record ID will actually be saved for you, which is one of these rows. Which one is it? Oh, here, this one, the record ID. It's going to get saved here. The fine-tuning ID is going to get saved so we can use it later here. So if we hop back here now, what we're going to do is set up some timeout metrics here. If something goes wrong and this gets stuck, we don't want to sit there for like a day waiting to try and get a response, or even like an hour. So we want to set some parameters here to keep checking and polling the status from OpenAI. So what we can do in here is set up a edit fields module, which on the right is just like this, edit fields. So I'm just going to go edit fields like that, a set module. And then here we can set up some parameters to check the maximum number of minutes. So this is an hour and a half. If it goes longer than this, we don't want to continue just sitting there waiting. So we're just setting that here as a number of 90 minutes in this field. Once I move on from this, here's when we go to set up another HTTP module. But this time, instead of sending the information over, we're actually going to be polling it from here. So I'm just going to change that here because it's getting confused because it's looking for an item. If I just set that to first, that'll work. But what's happening here, we use a different URL here. And all we're doing in here is we're polling and asking OpenAI, is my job finished? And the way we do is we send this OpenAI a request, and what we send them is the record ID from the job that they're working on, which is the one they gave us. So we just append that same ID that they gave us a few steps earlier. So you notice back here, they gave us this record. I'll just pull that down here. It's not working because I've pinned that information, but all we're doing in here is we append on here this record ID. So you can see here, it's update records one. Actually, I got it from the wrong field. I got it from here, update records 1. So this is where I added that record ID. So if you look down here, fine tuning ID is in here. So if we put that to first as well, because it must be thinking it's inside a loop, it's going to work. So you can see all I'm doing is appending the record ID that I just saved onto the end of this URL. That's all you need to do. If you look on the right, you can see that's the full URL that's now being sent with that ID at the end. All you need to do is just leave it at that. It's a real simple. It has to be set to a get method though, because you're actually wanting to get a response, asking them, is this job finished? What's the status? And OpenAI will give you a response. So in this particular example, it's actually going to give me a response of canceled because I canceled it. So we can actually see that if we run it. Hopefully it'll work with that pin data. But if I just run it and ask them, what's the status here? I'm going to get back canceled because I canceled it. So on the right-hand side, it looks like there's a lot of information. I'll just set that back to schema. Might make it a little easier to see. But there's a parameter in here which will have the actual status field down there. I just had to pause the video to find it, but down there you can see status field canceled, which is what we'd expect because I canceled the job. But had I not, we would have got back a successful result out of that status. So once we go out of here, Then we do a switch module. Depending on what that status was that we got back, we have to deal with it in different ways. So we add a switch module here, which is just switch like that, open it up. And then here we just set the rules that we want to deal with the different responses. Ideally, we want succeeded coming back here. So it's all we're copying into these different rules is just this field here, which is JSON.status. They're all going to have JSON.status because that status field is always what we're going to be checking. You're just changing out how to deal with different results. So this one's succeeded. So you just have is equal to succeeded, is equal to canceled, or is equal to failed. And we also just want to have an extra output, which is a fallback at the bottom for anything else. Whereas if it hasn't given us any response yet and it's still going, then we want to just set how to deal with that. Because like I said earlier, we don't want to just keep going 4 hours later. Something's obviously gone wrong, so we want to have to deal with that. So that's what the fallback here. If you go fallback, extra output, that means if it's not any of these three, then fallback to everything else to come out here. So that's what is happening here, why we've got 4 options. So if it's succeeded, canceled, or failed, we're going to just route it to Airtable and update Airtable here. So it's going to be the same models that we're going to be using in here, and we're just going to be updating Airtable here with that status here and the fine-tuning ID. And we can also get the actual error here that was sent back. So if you look here, we can actually get the error message that was sent back and save it. If you remember when we set up over here, we had a column here for error. So we can actually get the error handling and figure out what actually went wrong and deal with that error. So if I go back here, that's all that's doing in here. It's just getting the error message, which there isn't one because I canceled the job. But had there been an error, it's going to get that and save it so we know what the error was. So these 3 methods here, succeeded, canceled, or failed, are all going to get saved back. So then what we can end up doing is just go back to Airtable after 20 minutes and check what happened. Hopefully you see succeeded, or if it was failed, then you need to just check, well, what happened? And you get that error message and you can go and check, there was something wrong with, something that OpenAI will tell you what the problem was, and then you can go back and fix it. But if it fall back and it was just stuck in a loop and it didn't actually complete, we're going to go down here and we're just going to set an if statement here, which is just going to poll it for different metrics of the time. So you can just use this statement in here, and it's just going to do either another wait step here. It's going to wait another minute, and then it's going to poll back around and try again. Otherwise, if it's gone too long past what these parameters are setting in here, the maximum that we allow it, which you'll remember here, we had this timeout here of the maximum. So you can see in here, it's referencing that maximum timeout module here. So if it goes past that, and we're going to wait, do one more check, and then we're just going to update Airtable here, and we're just going to use, that's got the wrong ID there to update on, but I'll fix that in a sec. But you just get that record ID. It's not going to come down this path, but it's the same record ID that you would have got from up here. So you're updating the same row. So I can just grab that from there, hop out of here, and go down back to here. And you're updating the same record ID, but this time you're just dealing with it differently. So it just timed out. So basically, you're just going to put the error message in that the job, you're just going to say it reached its maximum timeout and didn't complete. And then you're just going to put in here, the status field is timed out. So if you go back here, this will just always be set to timed out, because the only way it would come down this route is if it timed out and failed. So there is no other option. So you can just hard code that status here to timed out. You can just set that to timed out. The other ones, though, it could be different options here for that status. So that's where the status now is actually set to an expression of .json.status, because that's actually a status we're getting back from OpenAI. But this route, we're not getting any status back from them. They haven't given us a response because it's just not completing. So we don't get that response field. So this is why we just hard code that in and write the word timed out as the status, as the drop down. And then this is how we deal with it. So this one, something went wrong. We just have to try again and fix it. But we just got to deal with it. If we don't do anything and it sits here in a loop, it could be sitting there for days, and you don't want that to happen. I'm sure OpenAI would actually error it out after a certain amount of time also. But that's basically all you're doing. So once you've done that, if it's successful and you actually have a successful result that comes back from OpenAI here, which you will if you do it properly, then what's going to happen is they're actually going to give you a fine-tuning model name in one of their responses. So in the JSON file they send back, they're going to send you the fine-tuned model name here. Once you get that back, you can then save that to Airtable. And then on Airtable, you now have a new fine-tuned model that you can use. So the fine-tuned model name would sit here. So what does this actually mean once it's done? How do you use it? Well, the way you use it is if you're using an N8N, like if I go and just set up a new, let's say I'm using a basic LLM chain here to do some sort of a task for me. I'm just going to leave it actually like that. If I'm just doing it, let's say I have another workflow now, not this workflow, and I actually want to pass some information in here and get OpenAI to do something and write some content for a blog post or whatever, I'm going to choose a model. Now, typically you would have just normally chosen, whatever OpenAI model you have available, right? So, but once you've done this step of fine tuning, when you come in here and choose from the list that's available to your account, you'll notice that there's now other things available with these fine-tuning options. So you choose the model that you just created. So I can choose a fine-tuned model. It's still based on ChatGPT 4.1. It's just a variation of 4.1, a fine-tuned variation of 4.1. So now I can choose this model to write from because I've fine-tuned it to the way that I want it to do it. So that's the end game of what we're trying to get to, is creating a new model that we can use in our automations. So let's just recap exactly what we've done, because there's a fair bit that we've walked through in this automation. So what we're doing, first of all, is we're training ChatGPT with examples. That's what we did at that Google Drive. We gave it all those rows of system, user, and assistant prompts, which is explaining, here's the task, here's the user prompt, and here's an example output. Here's a task, user prompt, example output. And you just do as many of those in those rows. Once you've got Airtable set up, that's just record keeping for all of this, where the fine-tuning ID goes, with the name. So we can just have a record. If you're doing this a lot of times, you might lose track of what's going on. So this is really just a record keeper is all we're doing at Airtable, and then enabling us to send some information over like the type of model that we want to actually fine-tune. So that's what that step did. This step was just those examples. These two steps here are preparing those examples in a JSON-L file and the data binary file. These steps were the OpenAI steps. We just sent this file over in the right format. This step was actually running the fine-tuning, and this is where we mapped in all of the different settings of the fine-tuning model that we want to use. So if it was 4.1 or nano or whatever, we need to tell ChatGPT, and we did that in that JSON file by mapping in those fields from Airtable. Then we just update Airtable with the ID of the job, because at this stage, fine-tuning is started, and we get a job ID back. We just quickly save that. And then this last step was just polling to see, is this job that you just gave me the ID back finished? Did it succeed? Did it get canceled? Did it fail? Is it stuck in a loop that's not completing? And that's all this was handling. It's just different results. And the way we do that, we just set up a simple GET request, asking it to check on that fine-tuning job, and it would ping us back and give us a result. Hopefully you got a success and it goes straight through to Airtable. Then you've saved everything in Airtable. But then the cool thing is, once you come back in and use OpenAI, you don't need to go to Airtable to get it. It's already in your OpenAI account for you, sitting there to use. OpenAI just then allows it to be an option for you when you use these models. So that's how fine-tuning can be used to train ChatGPT's models to sound more like your writing style for whatever content that you're doing. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, do me a huge favor, leave me a comment below and let me know what other videos that you would like me to create, and hit subscribe, thumbs up, and I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next